Welcome to We and Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories and their words. They are the we in Lewes. I'm Kevin McGinnis. Our guest today is Richard Martin, a Lewes legend, a two-time world record holder, an instrumental part of the team that designed, tested, and built the spacesuits used in the Apollo mission to the moon, a man who has spent thousands of hours scuba diving and free diving in the waters off Lewes. He is also the fittest 86-year-old I have ever had the honor of meeting. If you don't believe me, when was the last time you caught and by yourself while still in the water lifted a 112-pound fish into a boat? Today's episode is brought to you on behalf of the Lewes Historical Society. Founded in 1961, the Society is charged with helping preserve Lewes's architectural heritage and to act as a steward for its Western European history, which stretches back to the humble Dutch origins in 1631. It's known for its tours, museums, publications, and an array of events that make the town's past come alive. Lewes has been plundered by privateers, bargained with Captain Kidd for his loot, bombarded by the British, yet somehow managed to outlast them all. You can find these stories and so much more at the Society. Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I was shocked that you were interested in hearing my stories.
We both know it wasn't that bad. Big a shock. When you say fishing, most people have images of a man holding a rod and reel, sitting on a boat or on a rock for hours waiting for a bite.
Boring.
You, on the other hand, literally hunt fish. What exactly is free dive spearfishing?
Well, free dive spearfishing, depending what geographic area you're in, but here the water's pretty dirty. If I could see from me to you and we're only about 5 feet away, that's excellent. Unfortunately, it's like 3 to 5 feet. And the last couple of years, it's really been dirty. The visibility, you can't see anything. So I didn't even get in the water last year. But anyway, answer to your question, free dive spearfishing it's breath holding. You don't use any scuba tanks. You got a mask, fin, snorkel, a wetsuit. You got a knife. You got a gun, a spear gun, and you get into the water along the rocks. First, you got to get out there. So I was going out there in a little 14-foot boat for 60 years, and you anchor the bow, then back into the boat, throw a toggle rock line into the rocks to keep your boat in place because you're going to be leaving it. So you're out of the boat, swimming in the water, and you go over to the rocks and dive down, checking the visibility primarily. And if visibility is good there, by visibility I mean what you can see underwater, because sometimes you can't see 2 feet, other times occasionally I have seen 20 feet.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so you're holding your breath. You're not using a scuba tank. You take a breath through the snorkel and then dive down, and you go along the rocks and looking for fish, and also use the rocks for cover so the fish don't detect you too quickly. And when you see a fish that you want, you shoot it with a spear gun and swim it back to the rocks, climb up on the rocks. Generally, you kill the fish with your knife real quickly, put it out of its misery, and then you string it on a line on the rocks, and then repeat that until you're done for the day. And sometimes, if the visibility is good, I've dived for as long as 5 hours. And that's one advantage of free diving. If you're diving with a scuba tank, typically you'll run out of air in 60 minutes. They're good for 60 feet at 60 minutes, 90 feet only 20 minutes. So, like if you go out on a wreck dive with a scuba tank at 90 feet, like on the Washingtonian off of Ocean City, Maryland, you're down there for 20 minutes. You got to come up. You're done. But I can go out here. I go diving for 3, 4, 5 hours and be comfortable until you get too cold or whatever.
Now, you dive a lot near the National Harbor of Refuge breakwater. Is that right?
Yes.
What kind of fish do you see?
Typically, you'll see tautog. That's an excellent eating fish because their diet primarily is mussels. And sheep's head, which we didn't used to have, but with the climate change, we have quite a few sheep's head And you got triggerfish, spadefish, stripers. So in the Chesapeake, they call them rockfish, but they're generally known as both names: striped bass, stripers, rockfish, black drum. You don't see many black drum, and that's about the most prominent species that are here.
How long can you, or how long today, or how long before could you stay down when you dove?
Well, it depends on, you can stay down. It's based on your comfort level. If you're comfortable, if the visibility is good, and it's a warm day, and there's no waves crashing around, you could probably stay down. I'm not saying you specifically, but an experienced diver could probably stay down 2 minutes, hold your breath, maybe a little longer. If you get involved in something, you forget how long you've been there, and you're distracted, you're not thinking about. But your lungs eventually tell you you've got to go up and get a breath of air. I mean, that's just that simple. Trying to think of, I used to dive in Florida and California, and I could dive 60, 70 feet and stay a minute and a half.
Wow.
But some divers out there who dive frequently in the California waters, they could dive 90 feet and stay 2 minutes.
Serious.
That's down there.
And that's down. They still have to come up.
That's going down and coming up.
Wow. One of the challenges when you spearfish, you just mentioned, you spear the fish, then you have to get it back to the boat, or you have to get it up on the breakwater or wherever. But when you spear a fish, it doesn't mean the fish is done.
He doesn't drop over dead. It depends where you hit it, first of all. So they're swimming around, and I've had large stripers. It's almost like having a horse on a lunge line, because you've got it attached to your spear gun, and the spear is attached to the fish. So the fish can only swim in one direction, forward. So he's going around and around and around you, and you're pulling him in closer to you. And the first thing you try to do is take control of the fish, even if it seems like you're going to injure yourself, because you'll put the fish into your chest with the spear and push it. Push it in towards yourself to make sure that's totally...
The spear goes all the way through?
And not necessarily all the way through, but certainly in there hard, far enough that it's not going to come out. But you're really pushing it against your chest, so if it ever really went through, but you got a wetsuit on, and so I've never been impaled.
But a fish floundering, I mean, not floundering, a fish spinning around like that, perhaps bleeding, is going to track potentially other predators, correct?
Well, they could. People always, that's the primary concern about people thinking about going diving. They always think about sharks. That's why I say if you get the comfort level, you can stay much longer. You're much more comfortable in the water. But the first thing you have to do is get over that mindset that something's out there lurking to get you. Because and I know that that's a reality in the beginning. That's all everybody think of. And I've seen many sharks. I saw 11 sharks in 2 days out there not long ago. And they were anywhere from, I guess, 5 feet, 4 or 5 feet, up to 9 feet. And when I see one 9 feet, I just get out of the water in case he decides he's hungrier than usual. But I've never been aggressively attacked by a shark, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds.
But you also do certain things to sort of discourage their attention. Is that right? Like you'll go down. I think you mentioned in your book, which we'll get to in a second, you'll go down and sort of rest or tuck in under a rock.
Yeah, they're big.
You won't be flailing
around. The rock
around.
pile is like stair steps going down. At the surface of the rock pile at the top is about 40 feet across, and it goes down in stair steps on each side of the rock pile. These are big granite rocks. They're like 4 by 6 feet. The boulders, rocks, they're cut, they're squared off, rectangular. And you climb down and you get into the water, and then you go down, and typically you keep your body pretty close to the rocks, not out away from the rocks, because it gives you some concealment. And then if you'll find a crevice between the rocks, and you can lower yourself in that crevice, and that also helps to keep the current from, sometimes the current out there is so strong, it can actually roll you along. So you really have to tuck yourself in somewhere to let the current go over you or around you. And a fish can still swim in that current.
Now, in your book, Free Dive Spearfishing at the National Harbor of Refuge, one gets the impression that the biggest dangers for divers, if they're skilled like you are, it's not sharks, it's not jellyfish, it's not passing motorboats. It seems to be walking on the breakwater out there.
Absolutely.
You, even as one as experienced as you've taken a tumble, right?
Yeah, I've had a couple. I've had more than one. But, yeah, you get mesmerized if you're walking like on this breakwater out here. It's flat on the surface. But there are little fissures between the rocks. And if you're glancing around at the bay or looking at boats out in the water and stuff like that, you could actually, misstep and put your foot down between the rocks, and now you're going down. And you're carrying a spear gun, and you got bags of fish, all kinds of stuff. And it's an easy tripping experience. But the one you're referring to, I think, is up at Brandywine Lake. Those rocks up there, they're not flat on top. They're just thrown in there. They're just low, typically tossed from something. And they're almost triangular shaped. And it was a spearfishing contest, and I was trying to get from one area to another, and I didn't want to waste time swimming around it. It's horseshoe shaped out there, Brandywine Lake. It's actually in New Jersey. A lot of people don't realize that. And so I said, well, I'm going to walk across the thing, and I'm carrying a spear gun, a bag, and all kinds of stuff. And I stepped on this one rock that was triangular at the top, and I had a foot on each side of it, and my boot sole sheared off of my right boot because of my weight. It just went down the side of the rock, and it sheared out. And I fell down on the left side, and when I did, I heard this popping noise, and I looked down, and my leg was about a 30-degree angle from my knee down out. And like, Christ, what's now what, And I ran my leg down my wetsuit-covered leg to make sure there wasn't a bone protruding or anything, and I couldn't feel anything. So I just, reached down farther and snapped it back in, and it just popped out. I mean, it smarted pretty good. And but I got across, and I started diving and finished the dive. And coincidentally, that's you read in the book. People ask about accidents and such. One guy from, I think it was a DC dive club, we were having competition. One of their guys accidentally shot another one of their guys through the upper arm. Went through the upper arm behind the shoulder and came out here at the bicep. The spear stuck through, and he couldn't see me that clear. He saw some movement under the water, and he thought it was a fish, and he fired because everybody's got black wetsuits on. And he thought, but obviously you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to make sure what you're shooting at. But it went through, so we had to pull the guy out and unthread the spear point off the spear, pull the spear back through his arm, tell him to quit whining, and, get over it, And we got a contest going on. Shut up and, get over it. So, but anyway, my leg was really bad. I had to take a couple of days off from work, and it swelled way back up. And eventually I had Jim Marble do arthroscopic surgery on my right knee, and that's the story about that.
Wow. Just really quick, where can listeners find a copy of what is now your first book?
At the Biblion bookstore in town here on 2nd Street. Jen runs that. She has them available there, and also the Lemon Tree Restaurant on Savannah Road on the beach. She has them there.
You sort of downplayed sharks, jellyfish, but you have to be careful. I mean, I think you have one story where you were out diving, you thought everything was right, and suddenly you realized there was a shark right behind you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that happens, unfortunately, pretty common. I mean, the sharks are inquisitive, and they're hungry. And they're not after me. They're after the fish just like I am. But I shot a fish. I was down maybe 5 or 8 feet. I shot a tautog, and it went down deeper into a hole. And I'm looking down there, get ready to pull it back, and I get this uneasy feeling. I look to my right, and there's a shark's head, eyes right over my shoulder, looking at the same thing. And that freaked me out a little bit. So I swam over to the rock pile to get up on a higher level away from the shark, and it grabbed the fish on the spear, and I'm pulling this spear, and he got most of the fish. I wound up with the head. So those things happen.
And I didn't appreciate this. If there is a jellyfish season, it seems in Lewes, when the water gets warm, and we all sort of don't go in the water during that time. But if you're diving, you have a snorkel, and you're breathing through the snorkel,
right?
And that has a whole impact on a jellyfish I didn't know about.
Well, there's two different fish. There's two different jellyfish. There's a comb jelly, which is one that does not have tentacles. Looks like a little football-shaped thing, and it has.
Looks literally like a blob of plastic, right?
Yeah, a little blob of jelly.
Jelly,
yeah.
Okay.
And they're only about maybe 3-4 inches long, if that. And they've got these rows of silica going around them, and that's how their propulsion system is. But anyway, they're very pretty, and they are very attractive. But I came up and I blew. My son and I were out there diving, and there were so many, and you couldn't even see through them. You had to dive down through them to get below them, and then there's an area probably 2 feet below them that was clear with no jellyfish, and you could see stripers and tautog. And so my son and I were diving down through them, and then getting fish and coming back up through them and swimming them over to the rocks. Well, the one time I dove down, I came up. I blew my snorkel out, then I inhaled, and I guess my snorkel went a little bit below the water and sucked one right down the snorkel. I hear flop, flop. And I said, oh my God, I swallowed a comb jelly. And I was paying attention. I thought, they don't have tentacles, but I was still wondering, is this thing going to, my sensitive skin inside my throat, I didn't know if it was going to affect me or not. It did not. So that's the story on the jellyfish. But I have had them get hung up on my snorkel and sting you around the mouth, the other jellyfish with the tentacles. Because you come up, you can't see them sometimes because you're looking down.
When you dive, you always dive regardless of what in a full wetsuit. Is that right?
I do always use a full wetsuit because of falling on the rocks, getting scraped on barnacles, any number of things. So, even when it's hot out, you got different thickness wetsuits, and so for different temperature water.
So you have a fish. If the visibility is 3 to 5 feet on a good day,
yeah.
You have a spear gun. That fish, if you're going to see it, is going to be pretty close.
He's going obviously within vision, and then as soon as you shoot it, it goes out of your view, and it swims off. And I made reference a little while ago, the striper swimming around because it's attached. It's going to wind up going around a circle, but sometimes they will actually, whether it's accidental or intentional, they'll actually ram you. And if they hit you in the head, but a large rockfish or striper has a very hard head. I mean, it's like a sledgehammer. So you have to be cautious. They could knock you out. I mean, especially if they ram you right straight in your mask or your head. It's a big fish. I mean, I'm talking about 30-pound fish. So you have to be careful. I mean, you have to, over the years and years and years of diving, you instinctively know what you're doing to keep yourself safe. And people have always told me the number one thing about diving, never go alone. Never go alone. And I said, well, if I go with somebody else, now I got to worry about that idiot. I'm a big enough idiot myself, but now I got to worry about this guy. And then he might want to leave early. He might have a date. He might want to eat lunch. He might want to do you get by yourself. You get total enjoyment. It's just like going for a walk. And people say you can't. And all three of my wives, I haven't gotten to that, but all three of my wives and all my kids and all my people I know have always said, fine, go alone. And all they ever said was, call me when you get back in the boat. And I've always suspicioned every wife that has said that to me, what are they doing? So you may have to edit that too.
No.
So anyway, I've dived alone for 66 years, and when we have contests, obviously with other people, and sometimes I take a friend, my son or somebody that I don't have to worry about, and we have a great time.
But when you dive off the breakwater here, and you go down, you're not seeing schools of fish swimming by you or anything like that. You're not at a supermarket. I mean,
You will see schools of spadefish because they typically swim together all the time. They're edible fish. They're that big, but they're more southern species, but they do get up here.
So you have to wait
to shoot the fish.
To shoot a fish you want to catch.
Yeah. You're just not going to shoot anything. You're being selective.
Now, in your book, you have a picture of a goosefish.
Yeah.
Now, this fish appears to have escaped the entire evolutionary process over the last 60 million years. I mean, it looks like something from the Mesozoic era,
it does.
When dinosaurs were roaming around. Where did you encounter that thing?
On the bottom, obviously. They're a bottom feeder.
Was it here?
Yeah. They lay on the bottom, and they have a little appendage on their forehead. Thank God I added a forehead. They have a little appendage on their forehead, and they lay down and they wiggle, and that attracts the fish to come over to see what that is. And as soon as they do, they have this huge mouth. They're called all-mouth goosefish, monkfish, and they open this great big mouth and almost inhale the fish that comes over to see this thing. So they
have a lot of teeth.
A lot of teeth. Yeah, and they will come up after a diver if you happen to be swimming over them. They'll break through the bottom, and a big cloud of muck comes up, and scares the crap out of you.
Now, you've also been involved in a lot of dive contests. Is that right?
Our Middle Atlantic Underwater Council would send a three-man team to the National Spearfishing Championships, all paid for a week, in different parts of the U.S. I've been twice to Carmel, California, once to Massachusetts. I qualified one time to go to Florida, which I didn't go. And I qualified another time to go to Puget Sound in Washington State, which I didn't go. But you have these inter-club competitions, might be down in Virginia Beach or Bay Bridge Tunnel area, or out here, or up the Brandywine Light. And you compete. You could have 60 divers competing. And the top three out of all those contests for all the season are the three that go to the nationals.
Do you win based upon the size of a fish, or is it total fish?
You got a point per pound and a point per fish, but you still have your regulations as to how many fish you can take in whatever state you're in.
Did you set one of your 2 world records at one of these contests?
No.
So the black drum that was
all independent.
Tell us about that.
The black drum? Well, that was just, what was that, 2013? I think 2013. I just went out, typical dive. It was a beautiful day. So nice that I was able to anchor the boat on the outside of the breakwater, which you typically do not do because you have the wakes coming from the ships and the surge coming and actually the waves break up over the wall sometimes. That's another thing you have to be careful of, a danger out. It's getting from the wall down to the water level and back up on the wall. It was common enough I anchored the boat on the outside of the wall, toggled in, anchored and all that mess. And I went overboard, swimming along the wall. The current was taking me down toward the lighthouse. I was about, 300 to 500 yards north of the breakwater runs pretty much north and south down that area. And I was about 300 to 500 yards north of the lighthouse. And the current was carrying me down toward the lighthouse. And I would dive down and wedge myself in the rocks, maybe down 8, 12 feet, looking for a fish. And I saw a tog, but I was looking for a bigger tog or a striper. And I saw some other fish. And I went past a group of, believe it or not, I was down maybe 10, 12 feet. And I started up, and I was like surrounded by like 5 black drum, maybe in the 40-pound range, 40, 50, 60-pound range. And I remarked in the book, it was like you would think you would like in a crowd with cattle around you. You're surrounded. And so I said, so I'm not going to shoot one of those because I was looking for stripers. That's what I was looking for. So I kept on going down toward the lighthouse, and I made this one dive down, and I wedged myself in the rocks, and I could only see at best 5 feet visibility. And when I say you can only see that far, it's not like a brick wall. The water gets more cloudy. It's like in fog, like in a fog. And so you see a fish coming out of that fog. First, you just see a form. Can't identify anything. So you see this form coming out of this black fog, and you don't know what it is. And so I made the observation, well, it's not a shark and it's not a ray, but it's the biggest fish I've ever seen out there. And so I waited, it gets a little closer, and then the sun was shining down. As it came out of that fog, the sunlight was coming through, and it had a golden hue across its back, and which I had never seen before. So I immediately identified it as a black drum, but the thing was huge. I never saw one fish that big out there. And so it got close enough, and I had to move my gun slowly around, because if you jerk your gun around, it spooks them and they go swim away. So I fired and hit it in the head, and but I didn't know how much penetration it had made, and I immediately dove for the bottom, which was about 45, 50 feet, and I swam down with it for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 feet, something like that, and I'm pulling it back up, and I have a reel on my gun, but so I could get to the surface to breathe. And but it went down, and I did go up to breathe. Then I swam back down. I didn't want to put too much pressure on the line, because if the spear was not in there very far firmly embedded, it could shake it loose, and you've lost the fish. You don't want to do that. Not only because you don't want to lose the fish, but you don't want the fish injured and die, without retrieving it. So I was able to finally get it to the surface. I dove down about 3 times. I finally got it up to the surface in my grasp. And then I realized this thing's too big to haul up onto the rock pile, walk it back to my boat. I have to swim it back to my boat, which is 300 yards away. And I was a little concerned about sharks because of trailing blood. So I didn't have any problem with sharks. So I got it up there and tied it off to the back of my boat, and I climbed in the boat and rested a little bit, got my weight belt off, got a drink of water, and got a piece of rope on the boat and ran it through the gills and so forth, and pulled it over the gunnel into the boat. And then I started heading home, and a couple of friends from the Lewes Yacht Club were coming by in their boat. They waved and I waved, and they came over and chat with me, and they looked at the fish in the boat and, how the hell did you get in the boat? That's all they wanted to know about. Everybody, that's the number one question about the fish. How'd you get in the boat? And I said, well, if necessary, I would have sunk the boat. I would have floated the boat, slid the fish in, and bailed the boat out.
So then you took it in.
Oh, God. Then
you have to get it weighed, right?
I called my wife. I said, I got big fish. I'm going to go get it weighed at the Lewes Harbor Marina, Joe Marsh's Marina. And so I could get the state certified sticker on it. So I had it at the yacht club, and I said, no sense of me taking it all the way down there. I'll put it on my trailer in the boat. Took it down there, lifted it out of the boat onto the concrete, slide it over to where the scales are. Help the guy lift it up on the scale, and my wife's getting pictures, and other people are surprised at the size of the fish. And they only have one guy working at where you're getting it weighed. So he has customers inside. He has things to do. But anyway, he got it weighed, gave me my signed certificate. Get it off the scale, drag it back to the sidewalk, up to the boat, drag it back into the boat, take it back down to the marina, take it back out of the boat, drag it over to the dock, because you can't put it on a fish cleaning stand. It's too big. You got to clean it on the ground. And it's 112-pound fish. I mean, it's big fish. It's a job. You're worn out.
Well, you have to,
and you got to get the scales off before you can even get the knife under the skin to pop
right.
them
You're not
out.
You're not using a knife at this point. You used, what did you use?
I used a rake. They had a rake in the marina office building. I had to use a rake to pop the scales out of the way so you could get a knife in there. I have a whole bucket of scales. Great big bucket of scales. I was selling them at a yard sale. So that's the story on that.
So, but
fish.
then that was 112 pounds.
112.6
and that set a world record.
The previous world record was 84 pounds.
84, you got wow.
It's 112. But the International Underwater Spearfishing Association only allowed me 101 point some pounds. They penalized me because my wife didn't have a photo of some aspect of the fish. But in the narrative that I sent along, that's included in the International Underwater Spearfishing Association record book, the whole narrative's there. It says 112.6 pounds, but I don't understand that logic at all. So it's 101. Tip.
And did you then use the drum, cut it up, and use it and feed a group?
It was just coincidental. I think we got it like October the 2nd or something like that. I shot it. And we had a marina picnic at the Lewes Yacht Club October the 5th or 8th. So we beer battered, cut it up like fish sticks, like 1 by 6 inches, and beer battered it, deep fried it, and served it to everybody. And everybody remarked that, it doesn't taste like fish, it tastes like chicken or pork, and it doesn't flake. You can slice it with a knife. There's another downside to black drum. A lot of people won't eat them because they have, believe it, this is going to sound crazy, but they have worms in the tail section. They're called spaghetti worms. And when you clean them, you don't see them until you remove the skin. But they're like that long. They're maybe a 1/16 of an inch in diameter, maybe an 1/8 of an inch in diameter. But some of them are fairly long. They look like spaghetti, but it's only over in the tail section. So you just cut that part away and use the other part. Unless you got tomato sauce.
When did you get your other record?
Which one?
You have 2.
You said 2.
In the book, it says 2.
Well, I had one for a sheep's head.
Right.
Sheep's head. That was only 12 pounds. I don't hardly count that one.
Oh, okay. The black drum is just off the charts. Yeah. Okay.
No, I got a nice sheep's head. It was 12.8 pounds, and that was the largest at the time. Of course, records are made to be broken, and somebody broke it. They got a 15-pound one. Some guy down in Florida.
So it was scuba diving that led to your involvement in the Apollo mission. Is that right?
It was, actually. I was teaching scuba diving. I had an instructor's rating. I was teaching scuba diving at the Dover, Delaware YMCA back in the 60s. And some of the students that I taught diving worked at ILC Industries where they had the Apollo spacesuit contract. So one night I got a phone call from somebody at ILC asking me if I would come in for an interview because they thought they were going to start an underwater research program. They wanted to know if I would be interested. So I went in for an interview. So yeah, I'd be interested because I think I was selling insurance at the time. Had been doing that for like 7 years. And I said, sure, I'd be very interested. So I went in for an interview, and the guy that was head of R&D for the spacesuits and several other people interviewed me, and they said, here's the job if you want it. I said, fine, I'll start to work. And but within a week, the Apollo program was so prominent that they canceled. They didn't even begin the underwater research program. They didn't have the time or the people. So they said, we're going to just slide you over to the Apollo program. So I said, fine, whatever. So George Journey put me in with a couple of people making patterns, paper patterns for spacesuit sizing and everything. Did that for a while. Then I was a suit technician where I could change the hardware in the suit and make sure suits were readily available for astronauts. Astronauts used to fly in their own T-33 jets to Dover Air Base, and we'd pick them up and bring them to their facility on Pear Street in Dover and get them to fit check their suits. Each one is sized specifically for the astronaut sizing. And they would get in the suits and they could walk on a treadmill, they could do different exercises, they could do anything they wanted pretty much. And then they would sign off on the suit if they accepted it, liked it,
But you were, in addition to all these other things, you were sort of working on some engineering issues, you were doing some inventing, and then you were sort of the whatever is the right term for a test pilot for spacesuits. That was you, right?
Pretty much. I had 1,200 hours inside of spacesuits at different pressures from 0.75 That's gauge pressure. There's a gauge on your arm that tells you what the pressure is. And on a panel, you get in a spacesuit, you got an inlet and an outlet hose hooked to you. You got a constant wear garment and an LCG, a liquid cooled garment that actually it looks like long johns with Tygon tubing all through it, and they push chilled water through it. Keeps you comfortable when you're working in a suit. And the astronauts wear them too, or did at that time. I don't know what they're doing now. But you just work at different pressures, 0.75 up to 8 pounds, and it could be working on treadmill. You're trying to get the suit to fail, or you're trying to do something to make improvements to the suit and the design. Of course, you got the gloves, the helmet, all the restraints, and it's very interesting.
Now, you were selected, though. There was a concern about whoever was going to walk on the moon, that what happens if the suit breaks. And so they tasked you with trying to break the suit.
Right? One of them posed the question, if you were on the moon and you're out of the lunar module, the LEM, you're walking around on the moon, and a crotch cable breaks.
Now, what does the crotch cable do?
Crotch cable, they're attached to the waist. They go down through the crotch and go down to inside of your knees, and they hold the suit together. They're a nylon-coated stainless steel cable with a hook on each end, and they hold everything in alignment. And if you didn't have those, the suit the legs would want to go out at a 30-degree angle on each side, and it would be very difficult to control anything. So they posed the question, if you were out on the moon and the crotch cable failed, would you be able to get back to the moon, back to the lunar module? So I started on a Thursday afternoon. I did get some naps in. I started on Thursday afternoon and walked that thing on a treadmill and other things till Monday morning. They wouldn't break. I didn't think they would, but I told the guy, I said, well, you cut it with a wire, get the wire cutter. Come over here, cut the damn thing. Snap it, And they had a NASA representative there witnessing everything. It's at ILC in Dover. And so the guy said, you sure? I said, what the hell? Just cut it. So what's it going to do, explode? So he snaps it, and it would pop, and a slap. I got a slap thing behind my thigh, like a punch, and it made that popping sound, and I didn't have any trouble walking. I said, cut the other one. So I cut the other one, same thing. So I got on the treadmill. You could try to hold your legs in alignment vertically to walk, but it was very difficult. So all you do is turn sideways, and one leg will flip out. You put it down the other way and bring the other one, and the other one flip out. You just walk crab-like. And so I told the guy, the astronaut, I said, "Oh, you got, it's no problem. You can get back to the lunar module." I said, "You might have to walk crab-like, turn sideways, but there's no problem at all." I said, "I walked on the treadmill at different degree angles. It's not a big issue." I said, "Plus, what's your option?" I think you could crawl back on your fingertips or whatever. I mean, you're not staying.
Now, Richard, for those who know you, there's a little bit of a showman hiding inside you. Did you ever take one of these spacesuits out for a spin?
Yeah, that was cool. I asked.
Now, these are at the time fairly expensive items, right?
I did, but it's amazing how well I got along with George Durney, the head of research and engineering. I asked him one time, I said, "George, I got a diving club meeting in Wilmington at Fournier Hall at St. Anthony's Church." I said, probably about 40, 50 divers there, and they've never seen a spacesuit. Any chance I could take a spacesuit? He said, "Why you want?" I said, "They've never felt one or anything." I said, "All they see them in the newspaper on TV." He said, "You can do that." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." Now, where can you go to work today where they could give you that degree of levity? I said, "Fine." So I loaded a $150,000 spacesuit in a trunk in the back of my truck in my car and drove it to Wilmington, and went. And I had a guy go with me because I had it's called a PLIS, personal life support system. It provides air to the suit, and it's portable, sort of like a dive tank. But it's all.
And that's the box you always see astronauts when they're going to them.
That's what they're carrying. personal life support system. So I went up to the 48 hall, put the suit on, and walked all around, and everybody gaga. You know, it was beautiful. And everybody, they talked about it for years after that. I took the suit home that evening. My wife and I and my 2 children lived on a farm property west of Dover. But I brought the suit home like 11 o'clock at night. I'd been drinking and stuff. And I brought it in the house for security. And my wife said, "Can I see the suit?" I said, "Sure." So I had popped the hinges on the box and pulled the suit out, laid it on the living room floor. And I got the gloves and the helmet. She said, "That is so cool." I said, "You want to get in it?" She said, "I can get in it." I said, "Yeah, you can get in it." So I held it up, and she had pajamas on. So I got her legs in there, and I said, "All right, stick your arms in. Okay, now stand up." That unfolds the suit and stand up. And I said, "I got to zip you up, zip her up." I said, "They put the gloves on." I put the gloves on. I said, "Well, put the helmet on." She said, "Yeah, put the helmet on." So I got hooked up the bliss to you. I'll give you some air. Put the helmet, lock it in place. I said, "You all right?" She gives me a big thumbs up. And she walked all around the living room in a spacesuit. And she said, "This is the biggest surprise I've ever had in my life." She said, "I can't believe I'm in my living room walking around in a spacesuit." So I had to make sure I got her out of that. And I made sure none of her long hair was still in there, because I had to take it back to the plant. But that was the coolest thing. She really got a big thrill out of that.
What led you to Lewes?
Well, I've been coming here since the 60s for spearfishing, but then I wound up coming here permanently. That wife that tried the spacesuit on, we were going through some times where things just weren't working out any longer, and we divorced. And I had bought a boat in Rock Hall, Maryland, a 43-foot double cabin cruiser. It's a liveaboard. And I moved here on that in 1979.
And what was the boat called?
Who knows? Because I didn't know my future. So that's the name of the boat, Who Knows? And I had it tied up at a dock at the end of New Road in the canal I moved here in March of 79, which was a freeze, and the whole canal froze solid.
Wow.
And I think I had it till next January. Following January, I sold it. Because in the interim, I got married. When I moved here on the boat, I met a young lady, and we got married. And we lived together. We were married 26 years, and she passed away from cancer. And I went to the wheelhouse, and I met Peggy, my third wife, just coincidentally. And we married, and were married for 15 and a half years. She passed away for cancer. And so I just going back there. I only live a mile away from the wheelhouse. So it's a convenient place to go to eat and have a beer. And they had free Taco Tuesdays and stuff like that. So you started going there for distraction and to meet new people and have conversation and get on with your life. So that's how you do that.
One last question. What's your secret for living such an adventurous and active life?
Don't go to the doctor. I'm not on any prescription medications. So, every prescription medication they put you on has some other effect. I'm no doctor. I haven't been in the medical field, but that's my answer to that question. And staying active. I mean, staying active.
When was the last time you dove?
Year before last. And I got a nice fish. It was a 44-inch, 33-pound fish, but it was illegal. Because they have size limitations. And what am I supposed to do? A fish swims by underwater. Right now, the fish size limit is a 28 to 31 inch window for a striper. If you get one below or above that, it's illegal, and you can get a fine. 28 to 31 inches. I mean, that's that. And the fish is like this, and he's swimming. So, so I'm going to shoot it and eat it. Now, I'm not going
Now, so if you shoot the fish, you bring it up, you've killed it, and then you take a look at it and you find it's illegal.
You're supposed to put it back.
Put it back?
Yeah.
The dead fish?
Yeah. Same thing with a hook and line fisherman.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. My recommendation, I have said, is why don't you just make a limit? You can take one fish a day. We don't care what size it is. And there would be more survived fish than, by throwing it back overboard. I don't care if it's one fish a day, 3 fish a day. Forget the size limit. Just take a fish and take it home.
Richard, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your willingness to join us today.
That's my pleasure.
You've lived a life far more like one is. Okay, here we go. I wrote the sentence. It made a lot last night. It made a lot of sense last night, but I was drinking.
I was too.
Okay. You've lived a life one is far more likely to encounter in a book than in person. Truth be told, we only scratched the surface of what you've accomplished and the stories you can share from your thousands of scuba and free dives around the country. I urge you to check out his book, and when the next one comes out, to do that as well. And thanks to today's sponsor, the Lewes Historical Society. Remember, they have something for every age group, interest, and weather condition. Make sure you visit their website at www.historiclewes.org. And most importantly, thank you for listening and for your encouragement and support. To learn more about the show, please follow us on Instagram or Facebook at We and Lewes, the podcast. Have a wonderful day, and when you can, take a moment to stop and enjoy the wonderful hamlet called Lewes, which some of us are lucky enough to call home. Until next time, this has been We and Lewes, the podcast.